I'm Beth Brown. I'm the youngest grandchild of Edith Bond Stearns, the founder of the Peterborough Players. My parents, Bob and Sally Brown, raised my sisters and me in the little red farmhouse adjacent to the theater. As the story goes, the night I was born, my mother saw the curtain go up on the matchmaker, and I was born before the top of the third act. So the Players are quite literally in my DNA. When Van Sherman was writing the history of the Peterborough Players, OUR Playhouse, he reached out to me and asked if I would write what he was calling an interlude chapter to talk about, as he said, my unorthodox childhood. Of course, I didn't realize there was nothing normal about my childhood. I thought everybody had a theater in their backyard. But I was honored to be asked, and it's a pleasure for me to read a bit of it for you here today. We were a theater family. For me, the farmhouse, and by extension, the theater, was simply home. When my father retired from the Air Force, our family put down roots at Stearns Farm year-round. From early June until late August, our front yard and, frankly, backyard, living room, dining room, bathroom, and bedrooms buzzed with actors, technical staff, and wide-eyed apprentices. 5 nights a week from 8 p.m. on, 6:30 on Sunday, I knew there could be no bike riding, loud music, or the ultimate sin, slamming at the screen door of the house. There was remedial training for that last one, even for Gertrude, the family beagle. When evening fell and the steady stream of headlights twinkled through the dining room windows, as the procession of cars snaked down the driveway, the nightly magic hour approached. The hum in the courtyard would rise, and my mother would slip out of the house to warmly greet the arriving theatergoers, virtually all of them by name. The lighthearted gathering continued until the lights in the Coke bar would flicker, and the dull tin sound of the cowbell would signal 2 minutes till showtime. Obligingly, the audience filed into the barn. A sense of stillness came over the farm, and I would wait to hear the familiar knock, 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 signaling the start of the show. For the next 2.5 hours, I could hear laughter, applause, stage sound effects, and for 15 minutes during intermission, the clattering of the audience in the Coke bar wafting up through my bedroom window. Over time, I came to recognize regular voices rising through the night air. Ruth Alvin's distinct voice, Jodie Franklin's wonderful laugh, the Johnsons, the Twitchells, the Williamses, the Petersons, all right under my bedroom window. I'd have to duck down under the window or simply turn off my bedroom light and move about in total darkness if I wanted any semblance of privacy when the audience was in the courtyard. Peterborough was a small town, and it seemed that most of the town's 5,000 residents spent time outside that window. My recollection is that during showtime, the rules of conduct for family were clear, consistent, and well followed, including if you arrived by car during this time, you were to turn off your headlights, coast the car down the driveway until the tarmac ran out and you began to hear the crackle of dirt under the tires. Park the car, close the car doors without making a sound, and let yourself into the house without anyone in the theater hearing a thing. This was problematic for me as a teenager and a young adult, as any date I might have needed to be scheduled around the show. Often as the curtain came down, the final applause was heard, and the red taillights started the climb up our driveway, the house filled with our Players family. This was the time of night my father said his role was to pour scotch on bruised egos. My mother would take her position at the head of the maple dining room table, and chairs around it would fill with family. Some relatives, all family. My mother was a true night owl, and it was during these late evenings that as a child I was privy to, and as a young adult was privileged to participate in some of the richest and most meaningful conversations of my life. Players past and present would gather, drinks in hand, cigarettes lit, and share laughter, longings, thoughts, fears, failures, wishes, and always, always love. So as I knew it, this was normal. Family life was structured around the theater schedule, always large in numbers, with limited privacy, and no special privileges for birthright. If I wanted that last bit of potato salad in the refrigerator, it likely was already eaten when I went back to find it. With no locks on the doors and everything in the house seemingly fair game for the care and feeding of all things Peterborough Players, a personal load of laundry often disappeared out with the finished load of costumes. To this day, I'm not sure what happened to my lucky riding breeches. They weren't where I left them, as I got ready to go to Woodstock, Vermont for an event, and nor did I ever see them make an appearance on stage. Looking back on it now, I can see both sides of the equation. I shared all things with my theater family, most especially the love and attention of my mother, Sally. But the actors, technical staff, and apprentices too had to share their artistic endeavors in the small, sparse, rustic place they chose to come enrich their craft with a perfectly flawed, often intrusive, and demanding young girl. To me, the woodshed seemed like a logical place to store my tack box, my saddle, bridle, pogo stick, and bicycle. To the staff of the theater, these things became objects that needed moving to allow them to get into the back prop room for the necessity of the show and rehearsal. There was no line between theater and family. We were a theater family. While I didn't always have unfettered access to my mother, I was blessed to have so many other amazing and truly interesting women's nurturing. My surrogate mothers, including Rosanna Zuckerman, Rosanna Cox when she was on stage, Ruth Smith, Flo Peters, Ruth Alvin, Jody Franklin, and my Aunt Mary Kay. At the end of August, we always celebrated Sally's birthday, followed shortly by closing night of the fifth and final show of the season. The traditional singing of Auld Lang Syne, and the departure of so many of our theater family. While this annual ritual brought a certain stillness to Stearns Farm, we always had extras, even in the off-season. For various lengths of time, spanning many decades, in addition to Sally, Bob, Drusilla, Lulu, and me, our Little Red Farmhouse was also home to Melinda Stearns, Peter Gay, Colin Craig, Dorothy Maffei, Kirsty Craig, Ellen Dinerstein, Gordy, John Strauss, and many others. I raised a few eyebrows at the all-girls school where I went to high school when during Parents' Weekend I introduced Sally and Bob as my mother and father, and longtime and beloved business manager Colin Craig as the man who lived with my mother, which was technically correct, as my father was teaching and staying in Boston during the week, while Colin was a full-time resident in the farmhouse with Sally. Still more of our theater family came up for well-anticipated off-season visits, including spending Thanksgiving, Christmas, birthdays, anniversaries, and just ordinary days, when an evening ritual might include having the television set on and hearing Sally point out proudly, "Ooh, there's a Peterborough player. Oh, there's a Peterborough player," as any of a variety of shows came on and she recognized players past and present. We were a theater family all year round. I cherish having grown up with that special view out my window. It was bittersweet too. Sometimes I wish I could have had that last bite of potato salad. Well, that felt good to be sitting here reading that to you. This is the maple dining room table. That was my grandmother's and then my mother's, and I'm privileged to now have it in my house. It's around this table that for decades and decades artists would gather, and I feel their energy when I sit here. My grandmother and my mother would be humbled and thrilled at how the theater has continued to go and grow. They would thank you, and I thank you.